She ordered groceries. Love showed up instead. Doing the delivery driver. Chapter 1, Cartons, Chapter 1s, and the girl at the door. I met her because the fridge made us sound like a dying whale and my bank account made us sound like a smaller, poorer whale. Writing a novel is mostly inventing people who can afford fruit. So I ordered groceries the way you send a prayer, humbly, with coupons. She arrived 12 minutes early with a paper bag pyramid and a smile that had the audacity to involve dimples. The name on her lanyard said RAE in block letters, as if the font itself was trying to be casual. "You're Nora?" she asked, like she'd practiced saying it. "Allegedly," I said. "If there are bananas in there, I'll legally marry you." She grinned. 4. 2 ripe, 2 green. Relationship insurance. "Are you flirting with produce strategy?" "I flirt with logistics," she said solemnly, then ruined it by winking. "Where do you want the milk to live?" I gestured toward the wheezing fridge. She set everything down with the delicacy of someone laying out sheet music. I noticed she wore 2 bracelets, a woven one and a rubber band her wrist pretended was jewelry. The rubber band made me want to ask questions. The dimple made me forget how. As she scanned the receipt for substitutions, she hesitated. They were out of penitent marinara. "That sauce sounds like it has a backstory and a memoir," I said. "What did you get?" "Contrite tomato," she said, deadpan. I laughed too hard. Her smile said mission accomplished. When she left, she rapped twice on the doorframe like she was knocking the air luckier. I watched her go, then watched my reflection watching her go, which felt like something a person with a therapist would decode. I did not have a therapist. I had bananas and contrite tomato. I also had a new, stupid awareness that week had a ray-shaped appointment. The next delivery, there was a post-it on the baguette, "Write 3 pages before you earn me." I wrote 5, out of spite and hunger. The week after, she upgraded the post-it to a tiny cartoon of a shopping cart holding flowers. I kept the note on my desk like a holy relic and, fine, started Googling whether Ray was short for Rachel or Ray was the whole story. I couldn't find her anywhere. No socials, no nothing. It should have been a red flag. It was, at worst, a jaunty checkered one. By week 4, routine had color. She'd text, "Running early, want me to swap the oat milk for actual oats?" I'd reply, "I will never chew breakfast, meet me in court." She'd arrive. We'd do our ritual, dimples, logistics, doorframe drum. She learned my apartment squeak board and my dog-eared cookbooks. I learned she hated plastic fruit and loved the sound bags make when they rustle correctly. We did not exchange last names. It felt like keeping a kite at a safe altitude. Then the thing that wasn't a thing happened. She saw my manuscript file open on the table, read a single paragraph, and said, "Your sentences walk with purpose." It was the kindest thing anyone had said about anything I'd ever done, which is a ridiculous reason to hold your breath. But I did. "Thanks," I managed. "They limp on Tuesdays." She tapped the cart drawing on my post-it like a magician tapping a hat. "Keep going," she said softly. "You can borrow some of my logistics." After she left, I stared at my laptop until the font blurred, then wrote a chapter where a character meets someone at a door and learns her chest can house weather. It was not subtle. Neither was I. Chapter 2, Bananas, Banter, and Clues in the Receipt. The world doesn't announce the moments that change the map. It gives you a receipt. On week 5, the receipt had a phone number at the bottom. Not the customer service one. The tiny pen ink numbers you write when a stranger at a cafe asks if you're borrowing that chair. Above it, in her tidy print, "For substitutions or emergencies." It felt like a trust fall into a pile of avocados. I did not text. I am brave on paper and mediocre in the wild. But that night the power snapped off during a thunder tantrum, and the fridge made a noise like it had decided mortality. I called. "Ray Delivery Hotline," she answered on the first ring. "Is your emergency marinara related?" The fridge died, I said. I think it's joined a commune. I'm defrosting into grief. I have a cooler in the van, she said. And ice packs. I can swing by after shift if you're okay with a very glamorous stopgap. A sensible person would have said it wasn't necessary. A lonely person would have lied. I told the truth. Please. She arrived an hour later with a rolling cooler and a flashlight, which she used like a stage light, dramatic, unhelpful, charming. We rearranged my perishable dignity and drank emergency ginger ale on the floor. Lightning kept auditioning at the window. You always wanted to be a delivery driver? I asked, because the silence was making my heartbeat too loud. I always wanted to be paid to notice things, she said lightly. This is a decent front for that. A front? I teased. For what, jewel heists? Secret bag diamonds? She looked almost sorry before laughing it off. For snacks with new friends, obviously. We 100% did not kiss. We did laugh at the thunder like it was a clumsy god. When she stood, she hesitated at the door. Are you okay with me marking you as preferred driver in the app? She said it like a confession. My chest did that unhelpful kite thing. Yes, I said. Prefer away. The next week I noticed a pattern I hadn't seen, the receipt codes, those tiny alphanumerics in the corner, R17, R19, R23, were incrementing in a way that wasn't random. When I mentioned it, she smiled like I'd passed a test she hadn't meant to assign. It helps me remember who likes what, she said. Our numbers are routes. Yours is lucky. What happens at R24? I asked. You get the good blueberries, she said, and I tried very hard to be a person who deserved fruit. On R24, the blueberries were perfect and the post-it said, we don't have to be tragic to be interesting. I put it above my desk like a thesis. My characters stopped sighing and started text flirting. It felt like a minor miracle, which is my favorite kind. Then the little weirdnesses started to stack. A second lanyard in the van, reversed so the name faced inward. A pair of scuffed shoes in the back she said were for storms. The way she sometimes scanned the street the way a person checks a mirror. None of it was sinister. All of it was more. When I asked her, on a courage high, what do you do when you're not delivering groceries, she said, night stuff, with a shrug that had too much choreography. I told myself some people like privacy and that I wasn't entitled to secrets I didn't earn. My heart, rude animal that it is, took notes anyway. Chapter 3, Stakeout with Seltzer, 2 names, 1 smile. Sometimes the plot knocks politely. Sometimes it leans on the doorbell. The Ring camera on my downstairs neighbor's door caught someone riffling the lobby packages. It wasn't Ray. I would have recognized those ridiculous bracelets anywhere. It was a guy in a baseball cap who moved with the confidence of a person who thinks he's invisible. The building group chat lit like a flare. My landlord, who believes in the power of a strongly worded email, drafted a manifesto. It made no dents. I texted Ray the video with, please tell me this is a raccoon in a hat. She replied, that's a human raccoon. Then, you home tonight? I said yes before remembering I was a novelist who functions best as a couch barnacle. She arrived at 10:03 p.m. with a 6-pack of lime seltzer and a notebook. Don't panic, she said, which is what people say when panic would be reasonable. I've been mapping a theft ring on my routes for weeks. Your building's on the list. I blinked. You, what? She held up the notebook like a police shield except it was cardboard and covered with doodles of tape dispensers. Inside were dates, times, arrows, and the kind of tidy handwriting that says discipline louder than cute. She had drawn my building and labeled it probable drop. How do you know this? I asked, half thrilled, half annoyed that she had an entire HBO pilot in her bag. Because my other job is noticing patterns, she said. And possibly being a little too curious. The app pays badly. Solving puzzles pays in, sleep. You're a detective, I said, because some words deserve to be said out loud even if they sound like fan fiction. She shook her head. I'm a delivery driver with a spreadsheet and a grudge. Against what? Against people who think nobody's watching the edges, she said, eyes going flint bright. It's always the edges that get stolen. My heart, traitor that it is, fell 15 stories in an elevator labeled capable. We staked out from my window like suburban spies. She taught me how to take notes, column for time, column for weather, criminals hate rain. Everyone hates rain, Nora, column for suspicious activity that turned out to be a raccoon. We split a bag of kettle chips like a peace treaty. Midnight arrived wearing the good kind of quiet. At 12:17, baseball cap appeared. Ray's jaw set. There, she whispered. Same gait, same hoodie, same arrogant ankles. Arrogant ankles? I whispered back, helplessly smitten. Criminal ankles, she clarified. Then she did the reckless, beautiful thing. She texted someone and said, we might be able to stop a few porch-pirates tonight. Who is that? I asked. Building security, she lied with a fluency that stung only a little. Later I'd learn it was her sister, Sienna, a night shift ER nurse whose idea of security is, everyone texts me when life is dumb. Cap moved to apartment 2B's package like a man choosing a wallet. Ray's hand found mine on the sill, warm and steady. We're going to say hi, she whispered. Hi as in hello or hi as in hi? I squeaked. Friendly, firm hi, she said. Stay behind me. We padded down the hall. Ray's posture shifted into something I recognized from movies, a little taller, a little slower, as if her bones had raised their own eyebrows. She didn't grab him, didn't shout, didn't play cop. She did something rarer, she made eye contact and named him. Marcus, she said. He froze like a gilt deer. Do I know you? You do deliveries on the day shift, she said calmly. You used to cut through the bays at premium. You switched to night SWFT 2 months ago. Your mom lives on Piper Street. She's going to be disappointed if you keep going. He swallowed. The box tipped in his hand. Look, I'm just taking what isn't yours and calling it rent, Ray said, not unkind. We've mapped your route. This building has 3 cameras. The super across the street saw you last week. I don't want to call anyone who will make your life worse. But I will call someone who will make you stop. He looked at me for mercy. I shrugged with the authority of a person with exactly 0 authority. Ray softened. You can put the box down and walk away, Marcus. We won't post your face. We won't call your mom. You will not come back. You will get a job that pays in dignity, not other people's mail. He put the box down. He left. It was absurd and tiny and huge. Ray exhaled. My knees did not buckle. My everything did. Back upstairs, adrenaline made us idiots. We laughed the laughter that sounds like crying. She leaned against my door with her eyes closed. I watched her like a person who wants to memorize how someone exists. Okay, I said, when my voice returned from Albuquerque. Who are you? She opened her eyes. The smile was gone, the truth stayed. I'm Ray, she said. And I'm also, under a different name, the person making a map for a reporter who cares about how easy it is to be invisible and cruel in this city. A source, I said, breathless. You're a source. I didn't want to pull you in, she said. But I also didn't want you to think I was lying every time I left. You were lying some of the times you left, I pointed out, and the bruise of it revealed itself. Her face did the thing tender people do when they realize they've stepped on your foot. You're right, she said. I'm sorry. I wanted to be cool and witty and mature. I was instead human. I like you, I blurted. And I had to invent a whole backstory for your second lanyard because the not knowing was going to eat me. Her laugh was soft, tired. What did you invent? Undercover heiress. She grinned. Worse. Middle child with a spreadsheet. We didn't kiss then either. It felt like too lovely a thing to spend on a hallway. Chapter 4, Spill, Storm, Apology, Kiss by the Loading Dock. The next week we pretended to be regulars in a sitcom that hadn't been renewed yet. She delivered. I wrote. We both avoided the shape of what we'd almost said. Then life sledgehammered subtlety. A storm knocked out half the city's grid. The delivery app did what it does best, panic, and sent everyone to the same loading dock. I texted Ray to ask if she was okay. She sent a pin with a skull emoji. I grabbed a raincoat and 2 sandwiches and ran. The loading dock was chaos ballet, pallets, headlights, cursing, rain trying to unionize. Ray stood with a clipboard and a scowl generous enough to cover 3 people. When she saw me, she tried to look stern. It failed immediately. You cannot be here, she said, taking the sandwich. I brought pickles, I said, which is a thesis statement. We sheltered under a stuttering awning. Rain made cave music. She took a bite and closed her eyes briefly like the bread had just given her a scholarship. I owe you an apology that isn't a hallway, she said, opening them again. I should have told you who I was sooner. I am paranoid for good reasons and bad ones, but that doesn't make your confusion fair. I owe you one too, I said. For wanting the parts of you that take longer to earn without wanting to do the earning. Lightning flashed something theatrical. Thunder applauded like it had money on us. We both laughed, wet, a little wild. Okay, I said. Naive question. What does this look like? If we try? You don't ask me to stop being the person who worries the street is taking too much, she said. I don't ask you to stop writing people into bigger lives. We tell the truth when the truth is late but still alive. We share sandwiches in weather. Addendum, I said. We kiss at least once in a storm because I am not made of stone. Her smile broke like the sun behind a cloud that knows its cue. I can sign that. It wasn't cinematic, no dramatic dip, no rain defying gravity to make room for our faces. It was smaller, truer, a careful lean, a check-in glance, a soft yes, and then the kind of kiss that feels like a door opening inside your mouth. We both laughed against it because joy is embarrassing and that's how you know it's real. We didn't make promises we couldn't cash. We did exchange real last names, which felt like the appropriate currency. Ray Calder. Nora Lynn. Tiny anchors. Big C. When the storm moved on, the dock crew cheered for no reason that had anything to do with us. We accepted their support with humility. Ray went back to orchestrating pallets with her spreadsheet brain. I went home and wrote a scene where 2 people choose each other without needing a symphony to tell them they're allowed. That night my downstairs neighbor texted the group chat, package thief hasn't been back. Whoever did the late night Scooby-Doo routine, thanks. I didn't reply. Ray sent me a photo of her rubber band bracelet around my pepper grinder with the caption, collateral. I put the rubber band on my wrist and told the fridge it had to live, for plot reasons. Chapter 5, Plot Twist, Co-authors, Doorstep, Daylight. The reporter's story ran on a Tuesday with the elegance of someone who knows how to hold attention without choking it. The map was there, Ray's map, scrubbed of names, full of pattern. The piece argued for better lighting, better wages, and the revolutionary idea that people deserve to keep the things that arrive with their names on them. The city pretended to be surprised. The apps posted statements with the moral weight of a breadstick. Ray showed up at my door with a bag of blood oranges and 2 unnecessary croissants. Tell me it was okay, she said, eyes scanning my face for something she couldn't risk assuming. It was better than okay, I said. It was how I want my sentences to walk. We sat cross-legged on my floor like teenagers and read the comments aloud in dramatic voices until the bad ones felt like flies and the good ones felt like wind. My manuscript sat on the table pretending to mind its own business. Ray glanced at it. What's the book about? She asked. Before last month, I said, would have told you it was about a woman failing to be interesting. Now I think it's about a woman who learns to notice the edges. I would read that, she said. And I could, maybe, help. I mean, not with plot, I am a menace to plot, but with patterns. You want to be my research department? I teased. I want to be near your sentences, she said, and the simplicity of it almost knocked me over. We started small. She'd leave me lists, things she saw on routes, a birthday balloon stuck in a fire escape like a moon that forgot its job, a woman teaching her cat to sit using Cheerios. A kid's chalk map of a city that was just home written everywhere. I'd write scenes. She'd fact-check my delivery driver details with the authority of someone who has cursed at broken dollies. We invented a new ritual, read and receipt. After each writing sprint, I'd staple a tiny note to a scrap of paper, some line I liked, some line I hated, and she'd leave a grade like a patient teacher. I have never cherished a B+ so much. There were hard bits too. She pulled away once, after a day where a customer screamed at her for forgetting parsley. She didn't. I pulled away twice, after I chose a writing deadline over dinner and then resented the choice. We learned to narrate our own weather. Storm system over Ray, she'd text. High pressure over Nora, I'd reply. Then we'd meet under the awning and exchange sandwiches like ceasefires. The double life wasn't a twist anymore, it was a hyphen. Driver advocate. Writer person. Ray wore both halves without apologizing. I learned that loving someone who notices the edges means sometimes walking them with her, even when the view is less postcard, more scaffolding. We did the grown-up thing where you tell a few people who matter. Her sister, Sienna, cried in exactly the spot you'd expect, when we said we'd keep each other. My downstairs neighbor rolled her eyes fondly and said, finally, which is the small town inside every building talking. My mother left a voicemail where she alternated between joy and recipe suggestions because she expresses love in starches. We did not tell the internet. We told each other, often, in plain language. One evening, weeks later, the doorbell rang early. Ray stood there with a small paper bag and a bigger, embarrassing grin. I brought you something ridiculous, she said. Inside was a custom stamp that said received with love in a neat serif. I pressed it on the back of her hand like a doofus. She stamped my notebook. We were both, briefly, children and elders simultaneously, which is a nice way to travel. Come in, I said, and it meant now and later and the days after later. She stepped over the threshold like she was crossing into a new country where the customs form is just tell the truth. We did not fade to black so much as turn on the lamp. Kissing in daylight is a different sport. It requires honesty that has nowhere to hide. We were clumsy at first and then proficient in ways that have nothing to do with technique and everything to do with listening. When we finally leaned back, cheeks flushed, we laughed the relieved laugh of people who have already survived harder things. Do you think we're interesting enough? I asked, without stealing anything from anyone. We stole a little from the rain, she said, kissing my forehead. But it has plenty. The next morning, she left a post-it on the banana. No more tragic girls. Only complicated ones. I wrote 3 pages before breakfast without bargaining. The fridge made a healthy, mundane noise. The city continued being itself, petty, generous, impossible. When I sent the finished draft to my agent months later, I stapled a receipt to the title page and stamped it. Received with love. She called and said, where did you find your weather? And I almost told her the truth, at my door, carrying blueberries and a map. We still do grocery runs together sometimes, a decadent, unnecessary thing we call date logistics. Ray still notices edges. I still write people into bigger rooms. We still keep a cooler in the van, a rubber band on the pepper grinder, and a door that opens to a knock we've both learned by heart, 2 quick taps, a pause, a life. She ordered groceries. Love showed up instead. And it stayed. Chapter 6, The Interview, The Alias, and a Lemon Tart. The reporter asked to meet the anonymous source for follow-up, off the record, in a cafe that believed softly in jazz. Ray wore a denim jacket and the rubber band bracelet, which had become our private semaphore for tell the truth where you can. I sat 2 tables away with a lemon tart and the kind of sunglasses that think they're a disguise. People are asking who mapped the thefts, the reporter said, lowering her voice the way people do when they're about to raise the stakes. Corporate reached out. So did the city. I'm an app driver, Ray replied evenly. I noticed patterns anyone could. Keep me anonymous. The reporter nodded. I can do that. But I want your consent for one detail, credit to a route driver and community organizer. It gives the story bones. Ray's eyes slid to me for a fraction. Organizer sounded like a cape she wasn't sure she'd earned. She said yes anyway, voice calm, knee bouncing. After, we walked the long way home through blocks where stoops know everything. Organizer? I teased, bumping her shoulder. I organize oranges, she said, deadpan. And sometimes neighborhoods. We passed a flyer stapled to a pole, tenant meeting, Thursday, don't let them raise you out. Ray paused, tore off a little tab with a number, slipped it into her pocket. She didn't look at me when she said, softly, my dad got priced out when I was 16. I don't like that math. We sat on our stoop sharing the tart with the gravitas of a treaty. She told me about Piper Street, about split shifts and eviction notices folded into junk mail, about a mother who made casseroles out of almost and a sister who refused to let grief get weird without backup plans. I told her about my father's quiet exit and the way the word abandon can take years to stop setting off sprinklers in your chest. There's your book, she said, brushing crumbs from my knee. Not tragedy. How to live with ghosts and groceries. I folded her hand into both of mine. Co-author, I said, half joking. Research department, she corrected, which we both knew meant in it. Chapter 7, The Soft Launch and the Hard Call. My agent loved the new draft like it had learned Latin. A small press said the magic words, we want to publish this, and then the other magic words, in spring. We celebrated with obscene nachos and a plan, soft launch reading at Paper Lantern, my local bookstore, the same week Ray's reporter published part 2. Day of, I wore my best cardigan and the stamp in my pocket like a talisman. Ray stood in the back near the exits on instinct, counting heads like a fire marshal of feelings. I read a chapter where the delivery driver says, you don't have to be sad to be worth hearing. After, folks lined up to say kind things like, I saw my sister in this, and, I didn't know a receipt could break my heart. Then Ray's phone lit in her palm with a name she'd avoided for a year, Calder, Evan, her dad. She stared at it like it was a mirage that could bite. Take it, I whispered. She stepped outside. I watched from the window as the call rearranged her posture minute by minute, wary, braced, then, somehow, lighter. She came back with wet eyes and a crackling smile. He read the first article, she said. Says he's proud I noticed what he didn't when it was happening to him. Says if I'm going to keep organizing oranges, I might as well come by Sunday and organize his tool shed. You okay? I asked. She nodded, then shook her head, then nodded again. I thought proud and me were not a sentence. It's confusing to be wrong in a good way. We went home and made celebratory grilled cheeses with the intensity of astronauts. Later, in that fragile hour where the city's bravado softens, she said, I want you there Sunday. It wasn't a test. It was a door. Okay, I said. But only if they let me label the jars. She grinned into the pillow. You're going to be so smug with a label maker. I already am, I said, and kissed the place behind her ear where victory lives. Chapter 8, Family Languages and the Van That Knew Too Much. Evan Calder had hands like maps and a laugh that arrived late and stayed. He lived in a duplex that once was a single thing. You could feel the seam in the hallway where the house learned to be two. He hugged Ray like he'd learned better hugging in the past year and was making up for lost iterations. You're Nora, he said, offering both palms as if taking the measure of a day. Our Ray says your sentences march. Sometimes they wander around the block and come home with bagels, I said. Good, he said. Marching all the time is for parades. We triaged the shed, which was actually a museum of maybe use that someday. Ray and I sorted. Evan told stories that were essays in disguise. At lunch, Sienna arrived in scrubs, dropped onto the step, and ate half my sandwich on principle. If she looks fierce, Sienna told me, nodding at Ray, it's because she got an early start protecting us from everything we could name and some things we couldn't. Please make her rest sometimes. I can organize toast, I promised. On the way home, the van made a tiny clunk like a cough. Ray frowned. That's new. Mechanic? I asked. Mechanic, she agreed, but the van made it to our block, valiant and stubborn. She parked, patted the dash. You're not allowed to die, we have to fight capitalism. We carried in groceries we didn't need because we were happy, plums, basil, a wheel of cheese we would regret and adore. On the counter lay an envelope with no return address. Inside, a glossy photo of Ray at the loading dock, in the storm, mid-kiss. On the back, block letters, stick TO deliveries. Heroes get hurt. The room shrank. My throat did its sprinkler thing. Ray's face went very still. Is this about the article? I breathed. Or the theft ring, she said quietly. Either way, it's a warning. We call the reporter, I said. We call your sister. We make photocopies. We do not swallow this alone. She handed me the photo like it was hot. I hate that it used our kiss. I hate that it thinks fear is a leash, I said. We did all the adult things in quick succession, emailed, documented, looped in a detective the reporter trusted. Then we did the equally adult thing of sitting on the floor with our backs to the cabinets and letting the dog, our neighbors, borrowed for comfort and named Pancake, climb into our laps until our breathing matched. Do you want to pause the routes? I asked. Lie low for a minute? No, she said, then softened. Yes. Maybe. I don't know. I won't stop, but I can shift. Fewer nights alone. More pairs. And I'll bring someone when I come here after 10. Bring Sienna, I said. Or bring me. She took my hand, squeezed hard. Okay, she said. Bring you. Chapter 9, The Night with Too Many Keys. 2 nights later, we did a paired route, me in the passenger seat, official snack manager, unofficial playlist DJ. The city at 10 p.m. is a different creature, toothy and generous. We delivered essentials to a 4th-floor walk-up where a woman with a newborn cried into our gratitude like it was anesthesia. We hauled cat litter to a man with a sprained ankle who tried to tip us with a jar of pickles. We accepted the pickles and left the cash under his mat because pride can be tender and dumb. At 11:52, we pulled into a warehouse lot to swap pallets. The air tasted like wet cardboard. Under a sodium lamp, a man stepped out from behind a stack with casual menace. Baseball cap. Not Marcus. Older. Whiter. He held nothing. His hands were empty and that felt more dangerous than if they hadn't been. You Ray? He asked. Depends, she said, steady as a level. You? He smiled without humor. I'm the reason your reporter friend should do recipes instead. Cute, Ray said. Tell me why you're here so I can tell you to leave. I'm here to say that maps are expensive, he said. And accidents are cheap. My mouth tasted like pennies. Ray stood a half step in front of me. You done? You will be, he said, and took 2 steps closer, which was 1 step too many. Ray's hand flicked and suddenly the van's horn was screaming. Light shot from the dash. Doors unlocked, then locked again like a chorus. Across the lot, 2 other drivers' heads popped up prairie dog style. From the office, a guard strode out with the gait of a man who loves paperwork. Baseball cap hissed something, unreadable, and slunk backward into the stacks. Van panic button, Ray said calmly, thumb still on the fob. Bought it last year. Best $80 I ever spent. The guard asked if everything was fine. Loud car, Ray said. Quiet night. He nodded like he'd heard both before and walked on. When we got back in the van, my hands were shaking so hard I took a photo by accident of my knee. Ray reached over, wrapped my fingers around the rubber band at her wrist, transferred it to mine. Storm over Nora, she said gently. Storm everywhere, I breathed. We keep the map, she said. We widen the circle. And we get a new parking spot. I hate that lamp. We finished the route with a sense of ceremony, like staying ordinary in defiance. At the last stop, an elderly woman pressed a warm cookie into each of our palms. For the night, she said, as if knights accept bribes. We ate them on the curb. Sugar helped. So did Ray's shoulder against mine. Chapter 10, Daylight, Again, and a Door That Stays Open. The second article named the problem bigger than any individual thief: warehouse policies that make loss prevention a game, apps that push impossible quotas, neighborhoods that treat delivery workers like scenery. It didn't name Ray. It didn't need to. The work was visible without the cape. The station down the block asked if I'd do a reading on air. I said yes because fear didn't get to drive anymore. On the way out, we passed a community board stapled full of tiny needs: free couch, missing cat, GED tutor. Ray added a card in her tidy print: route watch, text if you see suspicious package activity, no cops, just neighbors, with a number that rang a shared phone she and Sienna set up. The tabs were gone by dinner. At home, my author copies arrived in a slim, hopeful box. We stamped each one like priests with our ridiculous received with love and laughed until we cried when one landed crooked and read received with LO, which felt accurate and also right. We threw a porch party we technically did not have a porch for. String lights across the hallway, potluck in Tupperware, Ray's drivers, and my book people and Sienna's nurses and our downstairs neighbor with her raccoon camera and Evan with unlabeled jars we labeled together at the table. Someone brought a guitar. Someone else brought mango seltzer. For a moment, the city felt like a single room. Halfway through, a courier appeared with a small package addressed to me. Inside, a map of our neighborhood etched on wood, edges starred where we'd intervened, where we'd added lights, where the porch pirating had dropped to a statistic small enough to argue with. No note. Just the work, beaming. Ray stood behind me, arms around my waist, chin on my shoulder. Co-authors, she murmured. Not just of a book. Later, when the lights were tired and the bowls were empty, we sat on the stairs with our knees touching and our breathing matched. Do you want to keep the van forever? I asked, not as a career question, but an existential one. I want to keep noticing, she said. The van is one way. So is the map. So is you. Me? You notice sentences into being, she said. And people into bigger rooms. It's the same work with different receipts. The building door opened, a breeze carried in the smell of someone's cinnamon experiment. Ray took my hand and looked at the threshold like it was metaphysics and also wood. We can't promise the city won't be stupid again, she said. But I can promise I'll knock like this, 2 quick taps. And stay like this. She held. It was not cinematic. It was repair and routine and courage disguised as groceries. When we finally went inside, Pancake trotted after us as if he'd been invited, which he had. I wrote 3 pages before bed about a woman who orders food and receives a life. Ray set an alarm for a route where 2 drivers would split a night. Community is just logistics with love. We brushed our teeth to the radio whispering about local heroes and laughed because the word didn't fit but the laugh did. In bed, the storm was very far away. Daylight was a promise across the floor, not a dare. She ordered groceries. Love showed up instead, and kept showing up, on time, with substitutions that made sense, and a receipt that read, in both our messy hands, received with love. Chapter 11, The Grant, the Garage, and a Better Map. The wood-etched map became a talisman and a dare. A week later, the reporter forwarded a link, a small community foundation offering microgrants for neighborhood safety, lighting, lockboxes, tenant watches, mutual aid. Deadline, 48 hours. Requirements, a plan and a budget that didn't speak in feelings. Ray's eyes lit like somebody had plugged her in. We could fund door cameras for the ground floors, motion lights for the alley, a shared text tree that isn't 15 apps duct taped together. We could also pay drivers for two-person night routes, I added, thinking of Sienna's worries and the way fear steals hours you never get back. We took over Paper Lantern's back table with coffee, graph paper, and a calculator that sighed judgment. Ray organized oranges in spreadsheet form, columns for cost, columns for impact, columns titled, "Is This Just Vibes?" that made us cross things out and then put them back because sometimes vibes are half the point. I drafted the narrative sections, the part that explained the city in sentences that walked and then stopped to listen. At midnight the owner kicked us out kindly. "Your love is adorable, my rent is cruel," so we moved to the garage. Evan handed us a work lamp and a tin of cookies labeled probably chocolate. The van sat nearby with her hood up, a metal cat yawning. "Waiting on a part," Evan said, patting her fender. "But she'll purr again." Back under the lamp, we finished our plan. Ray read the final paragraph aloud. "We don't want to be heroes. We want better logistics for love, the everyday kind that moves groceries and babies and books from one door to another without fear." She stared at the page, throat working. "Co-authors," she said hoarsely. We hit submit. Then we fell asleep on the garage couch like teenagers who'd eaten too much hope. In the morning, Sienna took a picture of us, posted it to the family chat, and captioned it "Nerds Against Crime" with 3 heart emojis and 1 wrench. 2 days later, the foundation called. We got it. Not the whole ask, but enough to matter. Enough to buy 4 floodlights, 6 doorbell cameras, print 1,000 flyers, and pay 20 partnered night shifts. Ray hooped and then cried and then hooped again. I stamped the award letter received with love and we took a victory lap to the hardware store where the cashier gave us a discount because your hair looks like good news. We installed lights. We trained a text tree. We matched drivers who preferred quiet with the ones who preferred narrating everything like a podcast. The first night the alley lit up, our downstairs neighbor recorded raccoons holding a tiny meeting under the dumpster, their faces surprised by visibility. "Same, buddy," Ray murmured at the screen. "Same." Chapter 12, The Panel, the Pushback, and the Porch. The city invited stakeholders to a public panel on delivery safety. Invitees, app reps, a council member who said gig economy like a language he'd learned phonetically, 3 drivers, 1 warehouse manager, and me somehow, as the person whose book had made a few council aides cry in a good way. Ray didn't want a mic. She wanted a chair 2 rows back, where she could watch the room for edges. I wanted to hold her hand, so we compromised, rubber band on my wrist, 2 taps on my knee when I drifted into apology instead of clarity. The app rep used words like robust pipeline and innovative friction. Ray's knee tapped twice. I said, "There is nothing innovative about fear. People are moving heavy things for us, and we are paying them in risk. That's a math problem with a moral answer." A warehouse manager grumbled about theft being the cost of doing business. I told him about Marcus's arrogant ankles and about our porch watch, our floodlights, our pancakes. Community is not a line item, I said. But it pays dividends. Outside after, the council members shook our hands and promised working groups and task forces, which is bureaucrat for maybe. We didn't wait. We stapled our route watch cards to new corners. We scheduled another 2-driver night. We brought extra cookies to the alley raccoons, who remained skeptical of governance but pro-cookie. Back home, someone had left a plant on our doormat, a pot hose with a handwritten tag, "For the people who make the hall lighter." We put it on the windowsill and named it Logistics because we are unbearable. Pancake sniffed it and approved. That night, under the soft hiss of our ancient radiator, Ray said, quietly, I keep waiting for the other shoe. Let it drop, I said. We'll label it and put a non-slip pad under it. She laughed into the blanket. Okay, label maker. We fell asleep to the sound of the city not solving everything and us deciding to stay anyway. Chapter 13, The Van's Bad Day and the Good Kind of Help. The van died at 3:06 p.m. on a Tuesday, halfway through a route, just as we were singing a duet version of the weather report to keep morale up. She coughed once, shuddered, and coasted to the curb like a queen exiting without fuss. Ray closed her eyes, both palms on the wheel. I can fix a broken map, she said. Engines, less so. We were 2 miles from Evans. The app was already pinging 4 replacement drivers like crows. We'll get it towed, I said. Then we'll finish the route on foot. On foot? She blinked. 2 miles, I said. 8 bags. I'm a novelist, I carry unresolved plotlines for sport. She grinned despite the grief. We divvied the perishables into backpacks. We left notes taped to coolers for the next driver, take slot 1219. We got the rest. Love, route watch. Then we walked, laughing in the way you do when life tries to bully you and you link arms instead. We delivered flowers to a woman in a wheelchair who made us take one each, or else the vase will feel greedy. We delivered soup to a college kid studying for an exam on ethics. You're my case study now, she said gravely. We delivered melons to a man who told us his love story in 1 block, 3 breaths, and a photo of a woman on a beach in 1974. By the time we rolled the dead van onto Evan's driveway with a tow truck assist, we were high on heat, kindness, and the audacity of being alive. Evan popped the hood, whistled, declared the alternator deceased, gave us both Gatorades, and said, You two are an insult to despair. Is that a compliment? I asked. It is, he said, handing me a socket wrench like a ceremonial sword. Tap that thing there. It won't help, but it will make you feel involved. We set up a GoFundMe. We didn't label GoFundVan even though Ray begged. We called it Keep the Routes Running and added a photo of the van like it was a dog we were trying to rehome. Donations trickled in, then poured, from neighbors and readers and nurses and drivers and exactly one raccoon enthusiast. The first big gift made Ray sit hard on the curb and cover her mouth. I don't know how to deserve this, she whispered. You already did, I said, and stamped the confirmation screen in my mind, received with love. Chapter 14, The Thing We Don't Call a Proposal. The van got a new alternator and a second life. The grant funded a 3rd floodlight and a small stipend for the Nerds Against Crime text tree. My book found readers who sent emails like postcards from rooms I'll never visit. Ray kept her day job nights and her night job days. We kept each other. On a Sunday in late spring, when the city smelled like wet stone and basil, I came home to find the door propped open with a box. Inside, a set of keys on a braided loop, 1 brass, 1 painted blue, 1 labeled garage in raised block letters. A note, 2 taps means, come in. Keys mean, it's yours too. R. I stood in the doorway with the kind of tears that feel like salt and a finish line. Ray appeared from the kitchen holding a pie tin like a shield. I baked, she said, terrified. You did, I said. And you, keyed. I would get you a ring, she said, flushing, but then we'd have to talk to everyone about it at once and I want to talk to you first. So, keys now, ring later, if later is a thing we like. It is, I said without needing air. It really is. We ate the pie, it was probably lemon, Evan's tin had been honest all along. Then we went for a walk to the alley with the floodlights and listened to the Moths audition for Lamp School. We stopped at the bulletin board and tacked up one more card, free little fridge, take what you need / leave what you can. Underneath, I wrote, in the tiny print that keeps good secrets gentle, received with love. Back home, with the van's key warm in my palm and Ray's hand hooked in my belt loop like a promise, I said, storm over Nora? She shook her head, smiling. Sunny, annoying optimism. Chance of naps. Forecast accepted, I said. New map printed. We knocked together on the door as we went in, 2 taps, a pause, forever, and logistics. The pothose leaned toward the light like it understood contracts. Chapter 15, Epilogue, Receipts for a Life. Here are the receipts. 2 quick taps. Still the knock. Pancake still trots like he pays the mortgage. The van, alternator strong, paint scuffed, dashboard sticky with something mango. We keep a spare cooler and a spare flashlight named Hench. Route watch, 84 numbers on the tree, 3 porch parties, 1 raccoon newsletter, unofficial. The book, a second printing, a paragraph that keeps getting screenshot with the caption, "We don't have to be tragic to be interesting." The map, updated quarterly, carved by a local teacher into wood for classrooms. A kid traced the safe routes and wrote home on all of them. We put it on the fridge. The reporter, still stubborn, sent us a card that said, "Organizers organize me." Ray rolled her eyes and put it on the corkboard, which is Ray for I'm proud. Evan and Sienna, louder, happier. The shed is a temple of labeled jars. I have never been more smug. Us, co-authors of Logistics, co-conspirators of Joy, supervisors of a pothose who refuses to stop crawling toward every window like ambition in green. On our hallway wall hangs a frame. Inside. That first post-it cartoon, Ray's shopping cart holding flowers, with a real receipt behind it. The total reads $0 because love is stubborn about currency. Across the bottom, stamped a little crooked, is our only necessary audit. Received with love. The end.